This one I beg you, baby, ja, I know get time, I did that. That cover my face, calling me down. Biggie man, we do the way I back. Hey, Mel. My nigga, what's it gonna be? G-Wagon, or the Bentley. They got them riding with me. I know fit, die for nothing. My nigga, what's it gonna be? G-Wagon, or the Bentley. They got them riding with me. Making the same thing when you do, they must commentate. I can't come and do myself. So anything we have to do, I try to do on my way. Plenty, so far we face. Just to make sure money day. But my people then go say, I know one fight, I know one time, I know one payment. I want enjoy, I want job life, I want buy motor, I want build house, I still want to know. Tell me, money go, what's it go? You are good, all the better. Take your shit, ride the book. I know fit, die for nothing. My nigga, what's it go? You are good, all the better. Take your shit, ride the wind. I know fit. Different things done happening, schemes and packaging. In our one life for shows, I'm juggling. Flows into the ocean, my boat, I'm paddling. Greetings, Noel. When it comes to money, I did concentrate. Number two, you are not my mate. If you be commissioned, I'll be head of state. Say, I know I can't cry, I know I can't die, I know I can't pay me. I want to enjoy, I want chop life, I want to buy motor, I want to build house, I still want to know. What's it gonna be? Or the Bentley. They got them riding with me. I know feet die for nothing. Hey, hey. Oluwabana. Yeah. 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 Hey. All right, y'all. Y'all already know. Anybody that know me know I love to be happy, and that song just get it. Just send me there every time. Shout out to my husband, call him your boy Bana. I love Bana boy. Okay, I love you guys. I love you, Miss Melly. And first and foremost, I hope everybody saw uh, the title of this video. And this is not in any way to make, like, this is not no race bashing, no nothing. This is straight up information, and this is that type of information that you can have it or you can leave it alone. Um, it's real. It really happened, and we about to get down to it.
So we hear a lot in this sector in particular. We hear a lot of people talking about mental slavery and things of that nature. I said nation, that nature. But no one really gets how embedded this is. How embedded this is into our DNA. And we're really going to touch on this. There was a statement made last year sometime. And I felt like, first of all, everybody's entitled to their opinion. And the statement this man made was that the Willie Lynch letter worked on you all. And they felt that way because they felt that way for whatever reason. And there were people who, didn't have any problem with it or whatever. But I really had a problem with it because as a child, I read this letter that was written on the bank of the James River in 1712. Um, I was raised in a community of people who were like Pan African, Nation of Islam, all kinds of different people, um, black Jews, white Jews, politicians. Um, I've been blessed to come into a lot of good people that molded me and made me who I am. I was also blessed by the Almighty with the mind that allowed me to not only receive knowledge, but compute it and implement it in my everyday life, along with a lexicon to, you know, a lexicon to verbally command my language, my the tongue of my mother, which is this English language, which by the way is a bastardized language. So we need to talk about it. Now, William Lynch was a slave owner and a slave trader. He was we'll get into his history later, but he was a slave trader and a slave owner. And he was the person who understood the psychology of the stolen people, of the slaves. And many of our ancestors were unbreakable. They refused to relent. They refused. And so the slave traders and the slave owners were losing lots of money. They especially lost money in Haiti, Benin. The people from the Benin Republic, they were the ones that were stolen and taken to Haiti. And they were not slaves after they reached the shore because they went into a revolt. And a lot of the Frenchmen was, a lot of the Frenchmen who had captured them, they murdered them, which is why, in Louisiana, the slave trade there, which was predominantly ran by the French. They were not allowed, our ancestors were not allowed to practice their religion because it was with their traditional African spirituality were um, they were able to shift into our deities or spiritual archetypes, if you may, and allowed that liquid ashe, that life bringing force, to come into them and give them the strength and the bravery to fight off their captors. Just a little history. Now, everybody, this is the making of a slave. The William Lynch letter. So, on the bank of the James River, which is named after their prestigious King James, it was Glory, God, and Gold and the Virginia Company. That's what they came for, so they said. Uh, so here it is. On the bank of the James River in 1712, this man gave this speech. And he said, "Gentlemen, I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me here. I'm here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods for control of slaves. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program is implemented. As our boat sailed on the James River, named for our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish. Catch that T. I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its old highways in great numbers, you are here using the tree and the rope on occasion. I caught a whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple miles back. You are not only losing valuable stock by hangings, you are having uprisings. Slaves are running away. Your crops are sometimes left, the fields too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires. Your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I am not here to enumerate your problems. I'm here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On top of my list is age. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, size of plantation, status on plantation, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on a hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair or coarse hair, is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slave, after receiving his indoctrination, shall carry on and become self refueling and self generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark skinned slave versus the light skinned slaves, and the light skinned slaves versus the dark skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male, and the male versus the female. You must also have your white servants and overseers distrust all blacks. But it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss opportunity if used intensely for 1 year. The slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Thank you, gentlemen. It was the interest and the business of slaveholders to study human nature, and the slave nature in particular, with a view to practical results. I and many of them attained astonishing proficiency in this direction. They had to deal not with earth, wood, and stone, but with men. By every regard, they had for their own safety and prosperity, they needed to know the material on which they were to work, conscious of the injustice and wrong they were every hour perpetuating, and knowing what they themselves would do. Were they the victims of such wrongs? They were constantly looking for the first signs of the dreaded retribution. They watched, therefore, with skilled and practiced eyes, and learned to read with great accuracy the state of mind and heart of the slave through his sable face, unusual sobriety, apparent abstractions, sullenness, and indifference indeed. Any mood out of the common was afforded ground for suspicion and inquiry. Frederick Douglass' Let's Make a Slave is a study of the scientific process of man breaking and slave making. It describes the rationale and results of the Anglo Saxons' ideas and methods of ensuring the master slave relationship. Let's Make a Slave, the original and development of a social being called the Negro. Let's make a slave. What do we need? First of all, we need a black nigger man, a pregnant nigger woman, and her baby nigger boy. Second, we will use the same basic principle that we use in breaking a horse, combined with some more sustaining factors. What we do with horses is that we break them from one form of life to another. That is, we reduce them from their natural state in nature, whereas nature provides them with the natural capacity to take care of their offspring. We break the natural spring of independence from them and thereby create a dependency status so that we may be able to get from them useful production for our business and pleasure. Are y'all still here? Okay. Principles for making a Negro. For fear that our future generations may not understand the principles of breaking both the beast together, the nigger and the horse, we understand that short range planning economics results in periodic economic chaos. So, to avoid turmoil in the economy, it requires us to have breadth and depth in long range comprehensive planning, articulating both skill and sharp perceptions. We lay down the good to the economy in the wild or natural state. Both must be broken and tied together for orderly production. For orderly future, special and particular attention must be paid to the female. This, you got to listen. Special attention must be paid to the female and the youngest offspring. Both must be crossbred to produce a variety and division of labor. Both must be taught to respond to a peculiar new language. Psychological and physical instruction of containment must be created for both. We hold the six cardinal principles as truth to be self evident based upon the following discourse concerning the economics of breaking and tying the horse and the nigger together, all inclusive of the six principles laid down above. Note, neither principle alone will suffice for good economics. All principles must be employed for orderly good for the nation. Accordingly, both a wild horse and a wild or natural nigger is dangerous, even if captured, for they will have the tendency to seek their customary freedom, and in doing so might kill you in your sleep. You cannot rest. They sleep while you are awake, and are awake while you are asleep. They are dangerous near the family house, and it requires too much labor to watch them away from the house. Above all, you cannot get them to work in this natural state. Hence, both the horse and the nigger must be broken. That is, breaking them from one form of mental life to another. Keep the body, take the mind. In other words, break the will to resist. Now, the breaking process is the same for both the horse and the nigger, only slightly varying in degrees. But as we said before, there is an art in long range economic planning. You must keep your eye and thoughts on the female and the offspring of the horse and the nigger. A brief discourse in offspring development will shed light on the key to sound economic principles. Pay little attention to the generation of original breaking, but concentrate on the future. Therefore, if you break the female mother, she will break the offspring in its early years of development. And when the offspring is old enough to work, she will deliver it to you. For her normal female protective tendencies will have been lost in the original breaking process. For example, take the case of the wild stud horse, a female horse and already infant horse, and compare the breaking process with two captured nigger males in their natural state, a pregnant nigger woman and her infant offspring. Take the stud horse, break him for limited containment. Completely break the female horse until she becomes gentle, whereas you or anybody can ride her in comfort. Breed the mare and the stud until you have the desired offspring. Then you can turn the stud to freedom until you need him again. Train the female horse whereby she will eat out of your hand, and she will turn and train the infant horse to eat out of your hand also. When it comes to breaking the uncivilized nigger, use the same process, but vary the degree and step up the pressure so as to do a complete reversal of the mind. Take the meanest and most restless nigger. Strip him of his clothes in front of the remaining male niggers, the female, and the nigger infant. Tar and feather him. Tie each leg to a different horse facing opposite directions. Set him on fire and beat both horses to pull him apart in front of the remaining niggers. The next step is to take a bull whip and beat the remaining nigger males to the point of death in front of the female and the infant. Do not kill him, but put the fear of God in him, for he can be useful for future breeding. Take the female and run a series of tests on her to see if she will submit to your desires willingly. Test her in every way, because she is the most important factor for good economics. If she shows any signs of resisting and submitting completely to your will, do not hesitate to use the bullwhip on her to extract that last bit of bitch out of her. Take care not to kill her, for in doing so, you spoil good economics. When in complete submission, she will train her offsprings in the early years to submit to labor when they become of age. Understanding is the best thing. Therefore, we shall go deeper into this area of the subject matter concerning what we have produced here in this breaking process of the female nigger. Do y'all follow me? We have reversed the relationship. In her natural uncivilized state, she will have a strong dependency on the uncivilized nigger male. And she will have a limited protective tendency toward her independent male offspring and would raise male offsprings to be dependent like her. Nature had provided for this type of balance. We reverse nature by burning and pulling a civilized nigger apart and bullwhipping the other to the point of death, all in her presence. By her being left alone, unprotected, with the male image destroyed, the ordeal caused her to move from her psychology dependent state to a frozen independent state. In this frozen psychological state of independence, she will raise her male and female offspring in reversed roles. For in fear of the young male's life, she will psychologically train him to be mentally weak and dependent, but physically strong. Because she has become psychologically independent, she will train her female offsprings to be psychologically independent. What have you got? You've got the nigger woman out front and the nigger man behind and scared. This is a perfect situation of sound sleep economics. Before the breaking process, we had to be alertly on guard at all times. Now we sleep soundly. For out of frozen fear, his woman stands guard for us. He cannot get past her early slave molding process. He is a good tool, now ready to be tied to the horse at a tender age. By the time a nigger boy reaches the age of 16, he is soundly broken in and ready for a long life of sound and efficient work and the reproduction of a unit of a good labor force. Y'all still with me? Okay. Now, right here, this is where it gets a little different. Continually through breaking of uncivilized savage niggas by throwing the nigger female savage into a frozen psychological state of independence, by killing the protective male image, and by creating a submissive dependent mind of the nigger male slave. We have created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever, unless a phenomenon occurs and reshift the position of the male and female slaves. We will show what we mean by example. Take the case of the two economic slave units and examine them close. Yo, Puerto Rico. Now, these are the things. This is the Willie Lynch letter. This was the man who came to the Americas and taught them how to systematically turn us against one another through small differences to keep us at each other's throats. For what he said, the next 300 years, hell, it's 400 now. I'm sorry, 500. It's a whole nother year. So, was he right? Was he right? Oh, hey, what's up, Khadijah? Now, let's get it. Now, this is how how they destroyed the marriage, our dependence, the woman's dependence on her man, the black woman or the slave woman at this time. They destroyed generations to come and said it will orbit on its own axis, meaning it will continue to perpetuate itself unless some phenomenon occurs and we reverse the roles back to what they're supposed to be. Okay? They traumatized the black woman. They're still traumatizing us today. Do you think that George Floyd situation was done like it was done just because Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner? Like, I could do this all damn night. Okay? That was not unintentional. They're still traumatizing us so we can raise weak men that will stay in line and either go to jail or go out here and make master some money. Now let's continue. We breed two nigga males and two nigga females. Then we take the nigga male away from them and keep them moving and working. Say one nigga female bears a nigga female and the other bears a nigga male. Both nigga females being without influence of the nigga male image, frozen with the independent psychology, will raise their offspring into reverse positions. The one with the female offspring will teach her to be like herself, independent and negotiable. We negotiate with her, through her, and by her. We negotiate at her will. The one with the nigga male offspring being frozen subconscious with being being frozen subconsciously with fear for his life will raise him to be mentally dependent and weak, but physically strong. In other words, body over mind. Now, in a few years, when these two offspring become fertile for early reproduction, we will mate and breed them to continue the cycle. That is good, sound, and long range comprehensive planning. See, earlier we talked about the non economic good of the horse and the nigger in their wild or natural state. We talked out the principle of breaking and tying them together for orderly production. Furthermore, we talked about paying particular attention to the female savage and her offspring for orderly future planning. Then, more recently, we stated that by reversing the positions of the male and female savages, we created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever, unless a phenomenon occurred, and reshifts positions of the male and female savages. Our experts warned us about the possibility of this phenomenon occurring, for they say that the mind has a strong drive to correct and recorrect itself over a period of time if it can touch some substantial original hori- mm, if it can touch some substantial, original, historical base. And they advised us that the best way to deal with the phenomena is to shave off the brute's mental history and create a multiplicity of phenomena of illusions so that each illusion will twirl in its own orbit. Something similar to floating balls in a vacuum. This creation of multiplicity of phenomena of illusion entails the principle of crossbreeding the nigger and the horse as we stated above, the purpose of which is to create a diversified division of labor, therefore thereby creating different levels of labor and different values of illusion at each connecting level, the results of which the severance of the points of original beginnings for each sphere illusion. Since we feel the subject matter may get more complicated as we proceed in laying down our economic plan concerning the purpose, reason, and effect of crossbreeding horses and niggers, we shall lay down the following definition terms for future generations. Orbiting cycle means a turning in a given path. Axis means upon which or around which a body turns. Phenomenon means something beyond ordinary conception and inspires awe and wonder. Multiplicity means a great number, means a globe. Crossbreeding a horse means taking a horse and breeding it with an ass, and you get a dumb, backwards, ass long headed mule that is not reproductive nor productive by itself. Crossbreeding niggers mean taking so many drops of good white blood and putting them in as many nigger women as possible, varying the drops by the various tone that you want, then letting them breed with each other until another circle of color appears as you desire. What this means is this: put the niggers and the horse in a breeding pot, mix some asses and some good white blood, and what do you get? You get a multiplicity of colors of ass backwards, unusual niggers running tied to backwards ass long headed mules, the one productive of itself, the other sterile, the one constant, the other dying. We keep the nigger constant, for we may replace the mules for another tool. Both the mule and the nigger tied to each other, neither knowing where the other came from, and neither productive for itself, nor without each other. Okay? Crossbreeding completed. For further severance from their original beginning, we must completely annihilate the mother tongue of both the new nigger and the new mule, and institute a new language that involves life's work of both. You know, language is a peculiar institution. It leads to the heart of a people. The more a foreigner knows about the language of another country, the more he is able to move through all levels of that society. Therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of the country, to the extent that he knows the body of language, to that extent is the country vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. For example, if you take a slave, if you teach him all about your language, he will know all of your secrets, and he is then no more a slave. For you can't fool him any longer. And being a fool is one of the basic ingredients of any incidents to the maintenance of the slavery system. For example, if you told a slave he must perform in getting out our crops, and he knows the language well, he would know that our crops didn't mean our crops, and the slavery system would break down. For he would relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. So you have to be careful in setting up the new language, for the slaves will soon be in your house, talking to you as man to man, and that is death to our economic system. In addition, the definitions of words are only a minute part of the process. Values are created and transported by communication through the body of the language. A total society has many interconnected value systems. All the values in society have bridges of language to connect them for orderly working in society. But for these language bridges, there, but for these language bridges, these many value systems would sharply clash and cause internal strife or civil war. The degree of the conflict being determined by the magnitude of the issues or relative opposing strength in whatever form. For example, if you put a slave in a hog pen and train him to live there and incorporate in him to value it as a way of life completely, the biggest problem you would have out of him is that he would worry you about provisions to keep the hog pen clean, or the same hog pen and make a slip and incorporate something in his language whereby comes to a value a house more than he does his hog pen. You got a problem. He'll soon be in your house. The Virginia House of Delegates in 1832 described the situation as it existed in many parts of the South at this time. We have, as far as possible, closed every avenue by which light may enter the slave's mind. If we could extinguish the capacity to see light, our work would be complete. They would then be on a level with the beast of the field, and we should be safe. I am not certain that we would not do it if we could find out the process, and on the plea of necessity. From Brown America, The Story of a New Race by Edward Embry. Any questions, class? Okay? Any questions? All right? I had to sip my tea. I'm really drinking lemon tea, y'all. So, what we just now went over was there was a man named William Lynch. The town Lynchburg is named after him. This man went and set up like a science lab, if you will, in the West Indies. And what he did there was work on the psyche of slaves and how to break them and how to make them dependent and how to steal their identity and make them subservient. And this programming is affecting us right now. For example, the Bloods and the Crips. What's the difference? What's the difference? And it is oh Mel, anytime, baby. And it is really important. It's really important. Thanks, Sir Cat. I'm looking at y'all stuff now. Um Word, deactivate your Willie chip. My bad, y'all. I'm checking it out now. Okay, okay, okay. Now, this phenomena, okay, well, it wasn't a phenomena. It was literally done on purpose to do what's been done to us. I mean, and for anyone to be a part of, um, for anyone to be a part of our community or sector or whatever the case may be, for someone to feel comfortable enough to say that the Willie Lynch letter worked on you people. I just wanted everybody to understand what that person was talking about when they said what they said. I also want all 8 of the people here to understand that this is real. Okay? Now, this right here was an op-ed written against this thing, and if anybody ever checks it out, it's called africanholocaust.net. And this this is something, oh my goodness, like this website is all of that. Like, I've been reading it for quite some time, and we need to discuss it. Now, one thing that I always feel some kind of way about is the hypocrisy that comes with racism. You know what I mean? And again, I have many people that I love, that are not black. So this is nothing, any of them that know, they know how I feel about this particular thing. And, let's get to it. So, the name of this writing is called Racism and Its Hypocrisy. All right. And it says, whites are generous without giving justice, personally humane without an equitable sharing of wealth, power, or status. Mulana Karanga. What racism is a matter of point of view. Maybe this article is racist. So, how can we discuss racism when the term is so liberally applied to everyone and anyone? Some will always insist they are not racist. They just are, have, and have not. Stop sending me stuff. Y'all are already done. Damn. I'm talking to Fashion Nova, y'all. Hold on. Fashion Nova is talking about my order. All right. Some will always insist they are not racist. They just have had thoughts and actions which are racist to the other group. But racism is so prevalent, yet seems to escape everyone. But there exists a perception by non Africans and Africans of African people globally that never gets interrogated and is always negative. And when did this idea take root? If not when Africans became the slaves of others, but racism is a disease which hits the poorest the hardest, the marginalized, the oppressed all over the world. And it does not exist on its own. It's always surrounded by other factors like economics and education. It feeds off of our vulnerabilities and internal weaknesses. And until Africans start connecting all these dots, racism will forever be running our lives. The worst enemy that the Negro have is the white man that runs around here drooling at the mouth, professing to love Negroes and calling himself a liberal. And it is following these white liberals that has perpetuated problems the Negroes have. If the Negroes wasn't taken, tricked or deceived by the white liberal, then Negroes would get together and solve our own problems. I only cite these things to show you that in America, the history of the white liberal has been nothing but a series of trickery designed to make Negroes think that the white liberal was going to solve our problems. Our problems will never be solved by the white man. Malcolm X. Racism is defined by liberal whites is when African people start discussing solutions to white racism and not involve whites as the arbitrators. They are the ones who will self interrogate racism in institutions and offer up reforms to redress the most superficial and trivial aspects of institutional racism. We see a laissez faire approach to racism, which pretends that by tweaking little policies here and there, or by throwing money at clueless black organizations, they have made their big contribution. If only it was so simple to fix 500 years of embedded racism. History shows that it does not matter who is in power or what revolutionary forces take over the government. Those who have not learned to do for themselves and have to depend solely on others never obtain any more rights or privileges in the end that they had in the beginning. Carter G. Woodson. You are free to complain about it by God. You are not so free to start discussing African agency and deep economic issues. The minute you beat out a plan to increase African unity and self development that is viler than Goebbels' notes on Jews. It is hard to see in the fog of war, but our issues extend way, way beyond police brutality. And it says a lot since police brutality has so many receipts that there exists no counter argument for its criminality. There are thousands of opportunities out there for African people, especially those in the West America and UK. There are far fewer hurdles than ever before. Technology further reduces previous barriers to trade that previously only create opportunities for the wealthy. It is not racism holding us back. It is us holding us back. Because to access these rich opportunities, you need unity, support of each other, and skills. Three things we do not like to discuss. It is far easier to speak about the hurdles than the solutions. You can give someone a hammer, nails, and wood, and even an instructional video. That person still cannot build a house without the will to do so. But a victim will never see an opportunity and would rather die of thirst while on the banks of a freshwater lake. Yet, you'll find that black rhetoric rarely exists to turn on people from a victim mentality to one self repair and reassessment of our engagement with our impression. Between Buy Black and Black Lives Matters, one gets pushed and one gets pushed aside. Unfortunately, they are not carried in the Western press as concepts that must coexist. Do not let the headlines fool you. Our campaign is far more extensive than that. And there is this tendency that our entire struggle for the last 500 years is summed up by single incidences without forgetting all the other battles that need to be fought. Most of those battles are ones we must fight ourselves. What liberal media reports on is a limited test of change. It is just good news piece for better ratings. We saw the Arab Spring, but we forgot. We saw Occupy this and that, but we forgot. And eventually, all of them stopped. All of them eventually lose media coverage and momentum, and we realize, far from being movements, that they are just moments. What all of them have in common is weak leadership, short term and flaky goals. You can pour $1 trillion into a Black Lives Matter and it would fail and transform, and it would fail to transform anything long term. Its main claim to fame is a lot of symbolic changes and a few changes to the law, while failing to deal with why we are always in front of the law, because it was never designed to do anything else, hence why it bears the white stamp of approval. Our refusal as black people to confront the issue of money and wealth is going to end up with our very lives being threatened as people in the earth. Dr. Amos Wilson. Take a look as Take a look at what is really killing African Americans. It is certainly not by a stretch police brutality. Almost equal to African Americans are Native Americans. What do these two groups share in common that puts them before the law? The same way that stats show the criminal disproportionately at which African Americans are targeted for brutality, there are also stats that show African Americans are involved in more crimes and live in more crime prone areas. So, why furnish us with one set of stats to feed the race grievance industry, yet withhold the rest of the stats? So the energy that goes into getting four racist cops arrested and a glamorous international incident does not go into education, social development, parenting, or business. And we must take a back seat to recognize why some cases of police brutality become icons of resistance. And what is stressful is that from all the chaos and global attention around George Floyd and others, have African book sales gone up? No. Do we know more about slavery and our glorious African history? No. For all this awareness, have our people in the main turned to keep money in our community? No. Have sales of conscious films gone up? No. But sales of white owned films like 12 Years a Slave have. Have more historical docs appeared on Netflix showing our ancient history? No. Have marriage rates in our communities gone up? No. Have the banks offered better loans to the business people in our community? No. There are many things people can do to fight racism. Protesting is the most emotional and also the most useless. It has the illusion of making us think that the world is taking notice. But is it? To make the world notice, you need to affect economics, like launching a rival to Samsung out of Rwanda that will cause the world to take notice. Yet, this option is never presented as options to oppressed Africans anywhere. And we think, moreover, our shade to think the only way is by marching and singing. But the African is the victim of both racism and useless race baiting. To the applause of the news networks who depend on race baiting for ratings, the African is so confused that all organized action to tackle racism is defeated by chasing the wrong issues. As most black skeptics will tell you, if whites are happy with your efforts, then you are probably doing something wrong. We are not here to sing with them and feel better for the experience and then return to a world where we own nothing. We are not here to prove our humanity to the world. We are here to exercise our African agency and take economic and political control, aka self-determination, Kuja Chakalia. Really could not give a damn about what anyone thinks about black people once we own our own world. So war against racism from the path of the African has a purpose beyond those presented in white liberal media. Ending racism is a means to get oppression off our backs so we can continue our journey and build the world for ourselves by ourselves. And this is where we need to look at how Jews used the anti Semitism thing. They did not fight anti Semitism and stood still, they used it to gain power. Africans, on the other hand, fight racism as if the end of racism is an end in itself. As if the end of racism and whites not crossing the road when they see us in the aspiration for a race. The most dangerous place for black people to live in is white people's imagination. D.L. Hewley. If we put every white cop in prison for looking at us wrong, it will do nothing for us owning an African version of Wells Fargo or Walmart. And that is a real objective. All of this race debates lead to economical and cultural liberation, not shorter sentences for burglary, rape, and murder. And why is racism always articulated with our personal experiences with white people? Like, when white people see me, they cross the road, or there are no black kids in these white schools. What is wrong with thinking is we forget the objectives of fighting racism should be deeper than this. People crossing the road was never stopped Chinese or Indians for advancing into societies. They call Indians in the UK all manner of names. The Indians still run the supermarkets, the halal butcheries, the Indian restaurants, the post offices, and so on. Having African kids in an all white school means nothing. We can have an all African school with world class students. So it sounds like ending racism for us African means an increase in whites loving us. But African development does not care about that. We care about how many stores we own in our community, not how comfortable we feel while shopping in a white owned store. And failing, this is why liberal whites feel no threat from groups like Black Lives Matter. Okay, so we're gonna take a brief intermission, y'all. Give me 5 minutes. I gotta reposition my life. Hold on. All right, y'all. My bad. I had to come out here and reposition myself. It's time for folk to go to bed, and I'm in here all on one at 3:03. So I had to come out here to my on my porch. This is the oh man, I would love to. I want to see Sir Cat. I want to see. All right. So here we go. So when you ask an oppressed man, what does he want? He might answer by saying more bread. But a free man wants more than charity at the whims of his oppressor. He wants the skills to make his own bread. So they call the tools of white supremacy the missionary, the media, the military, and the merchant. The merchants are, MTV, Facebook, Pepsi, everybody. And they say that's how they keep us sold up. All right. So hold on. Let me see. Why is this? I would really like to see this whole thing. That would be great. Okay. All right. Let's get it. Oh, man. You got products, Sir Cat? I want products. All right. Let's do it. History of racism. Whites are the greatest perpetrators of racism in our times. If you're having problems with this statement, there's no need for me and you to discuss how we will deal with racism and all its liaisons. This is not one of those ridiculous assertions that Africans cannot be racist or that racism needs power. This is a statement based on the last 500 years of human history. And one of the global products of Western Europe has been globalized racism. And to help Europeans build their shiny cities of the damned. Because if we as Africans are not careful, we'll find ourselves as equal partners in global racism, despite being the victims of it in every country, even when we were the majority. If we are not also, if we are also not careful, some of us might be convinced racism lives only in the darkest cracks of human society, that since Obama, Oprah, and Black Panther, we're in a post racist society. Yes, there's racism, but we still need to confirm. Hold up. Yes, there's racism, but we still need whites to confirm our experiences are racist or not. Slavery of African people was the greatest racist project in human history. Start here, not Nazi Germany. So, when a recent BBC article on racism had an entire discussion on ending racism, yet at no stage mentioned the TST, but did not miss an opportunity to mention the transatlantic slave trade. It did not mention the transatlantic slave trade, but did not miss an opportunity to mention the Jewish Holocaust. And all the discussion, perspectives of who tells the story of racism got missed. Because when whites write about racism and Africans write about racism, they are two totally different narratives. To me, as a victim of 500 years of racism, must sit down at the same table with a white America who has profited from being racist against my race and have them tell me, let us all come together and end racism. Am I the victim of 99% of the time? Not the perpetrator. I do not own enough of a share in racism to make those changes. This is not USSR versus America or the Reagan administration discussing the nuclear arms race. Race is always on the white person's mind. And if Africans love it using the race card, it as a reaction to always being viewed through the lens of race. You cannot plan a holiday to any exotic part of the world without wondering How will they welcome me as an African? You grew up around them, you know this. You could be arguing over a parking space, and their knee jerk place is to go to race from Barbados to South Africa. You could be blocking the road and it is race. You tell them put their dog on the leash and out comes race. But these things have nothing to do with race. Listen, she is not sorry. She is sorry because it backfired. Had it worked in her favor, she would have ran with it all. She is a white victim of a multicultural society. Her knee jerk default response to people of color was and is a threat. Kind of like how everything in the American foreign policy response to non white people is an imminent threat. Weaponized whiteness works most of the time. The white victim of an enroaching multicultural world. But it is also ironic and worthy of note that some of the most popular porn on the internet is of the threatening black male having his way with the innocent, upmarket white woman. Ain't that about a bleep? Racism has become an all purpose explanation for black outcomes, be they social or economic. Jason Ridley. The last 500 years of African lives include us as victims of white racism, not the other way around. The last 300 years of Indian history is shaped mostly by white racism, aka colonialism. The history of South Africa's most defining feature is white racism. The history of USA is largely the history of white racism, starting with the genocide against Native Americans and the subsequent enslavement of African people. If someone is in denial about this, it is because they are not serious about discussing racism. And then, what is the point in such a discussion with vulgar insincerity and hypocrisy? But that is not the end of it because Africans themselves are 100% involved in our own oppression, and that is no good either. An aspect of hypocrisy. To enslave people, you do not need to love them and celebrate their accomplishments. You need to dehumanize them and make it seem that Africans being enslaved is better than being left to their own mind in Africa. Malcolm X said we had to be taught to hate each other. When has this been fixed? You switch to National Geographic and Africa only comes up when zebras are crossing the Zambezi or when we are starving. Yet Greece, Rome, Israel are might nations in iniquity. Yet there is a current discussion about racism, and very rarely does this topic come up. Go on Netflix right now and count how many historical documentaries and films exist for Jews. Now see what exists for Africans. The legacy of slavery and colonialism was to remove African people from any claim to nobility, and this has never been fixed. The only cure for being powerless and a victim of racism is to gain power. And power comes in different formats. Economic power is the most popular one ruling the world. Contrary to popular contrary to popular belief, people do not hate people just because of the color of their skin. The hatred is almost rooted in the notions of inferiority in other areas. So when the Greeks saw the pyramids of Egypt, they did not find any grounds for perceiving the Egyptians inferior. Had Europeans found Africans riding spaceships in the 15th century, things would have turned out different for us. Unfortunately, the state we were in became worse and worse the longer slavery went on, which culminated us in becoming so weak that they annexed most of Africa. But our inferiority in both the Arab world and the European world was not the default until the notion of African and slave became merged. Black gatekeepers. If you want to guard your White House, there is no better candidate than a black dog. You get a lot of them in high positions with more hatred for African development in their hearts than David Duke at the highest of his Klan presidency. Worse than any white racist, these people look just like you, dark skinned just like you. And their job is to protect white supremacy because they look like you and can do the work of the whites even better. So, inside of the corporate world, you would go for a job and see a black skinned sister, maybe with locks. You are stupidly smiling to yourself, thinking you'll have a chance because a sister is hiring. You have no idea that far from give you a fair chance, her entire mindset is to send you packing. And this is more rampant than you think. There are boards, all black committees in places like South Africa, that ANC, that when conscious African centered projects come before them, they have more passion for stopping them than any neo Nazi. And a personal story, an entire project was handed over and an inexperienced all white company, so it would not be given to the Pan African Media Company. Not one white person was involved in this decision. Blacks on their own did it. People like Henry Louis Gates would are approachable to the independent African owned media. But if you are Jewish, he would bend over backwards to prove to the entire world how anti Semitic and inclusive he is, even if it means he is self hating and racist towards his own race. And these people function in a white racism is critical with a capital C because they are black, they are not interrogated for their choices. The assumption is that an all black board picking tenders for saying fashion companies or film companies would be sensitive to the race dynamic or be more favorable to minorities than, say, an all white board. Totally and utterly incorrect and full of fallacies. But we should know this from history. In the film Django, Sam Jackson played a Negro called Stephen. Who does Stephen represent if not exactly what is under discussion here? Who was the most protective of the slave master's interests if not Stephen? It was Stephen that was so vigilant that he spotted threats to white supremacy that white supremacy itself was not previewed to. The black guard dog is a critical tool of any oppressive system. And it is not limited to Africans, but everywhere and at every point in history. For the Jews, it was the traitor Josephus who dedicated himself to a Pax Roman version of history at the expense of his own race. We see these guard dogs all over the Muslim world claiming to be liberals and progressives. As Malifi Asante remarked, they allow whites to safe and better position to slam the African struggle. And some of them are not so obvious as white celebrated Gates. Some of them are perfectly dressed as radical liberators, while all the while being nothing but booby traps. The minute you bring your movement to them is the minute they sabotage it. Behind closed doors, they are busy like little bees untying the ropes that anchor us to liberation. The average Negro, remember, a lot of these loud black people not too long ago were breaking down the doors to white institutions to get the latest pair of sneakers. Today they are woke because CNN is airing the struggle. The same people, when you go into their house, the only films you found were Marvel, Tyler Perry, and Transformers, may be a black comedy. The only books you found were the telephone directory. The only clothes on their black backs were made in China. Today are the new revolution. You awake now? Check their Facebook page and all the trash that preoccupied their world. But now in the 11th hour from this month until H&M has a new sale, they are Malcolm X and Kwame Ture rolled all into one. And this is now, it always is. After Katrina, after Rodney, it's always this consciousness. and then a retreat to being a good slave, consuming and not challenging their condition. They have zero interest in changing anything. What they really want is better inclusion and acknowledgement by whites while standing in their own shit. What about the changes we have to make to be better educated to get better access to jobs and opportunities every other race coming to America and the UK seizes upon? Because if it is really only about racism, aka anti African, then how come Ethiopians and Ghanaians and even some Caribbean people, even more disadvantaged since they are immigrants, come to America and triumph? And we ask the same question to Black South Africans. If South Africa is so bad, how come others with fewer opportunities come to racist South Africa and outperform you? Clearly, racism is not the only thing we need to discuss. Why hate blacks? I am apt to suspect the Negroes and, in general, all other species of men to be naturally inferior to the whites. There was never any civilized nation of any other complexion than white, nor even any individual eminent in action or speculation. David Hume. He lacks the power of organization and is conspicuously deficient in the management and control alike of men or business. He loves the display of power, but fails to realize its responsibility. He will work hard with a less incentive than most races. He has the courage of the fighting animal, an instinct rather than a moral value. In brief, the virtues and defects of this race type are those of attractive children whose confidence, when it is won, is given ungrudgingly as to an older and wiser superior without envy. Perhaps the two traits which have impressed me as most of characteristic of the African natives are his lack of apprehension and his lack of ability to visualize the future. Lord Frederick John Daly Lugard, The Dual Mandate, 1926. You know, it's all good talking about being victims of racism, but how often do we discuss why we are victims of racism in the first place? You see, PC society cannot do that topic justice, but we can. So why do people hate us? You see, it is not only perceptions of inferiority, but we are also poor and weak. That is not a figment of anyone's mind. And we must understand how the world sees us and how the stats against us measure up. Because you can't be uneducated, poor, lawless, and matter. So you turn up in the Middle East and you on one of those big house of Nigerian businessmen, I promise you, you are not going to experience racism. But showing up out of the Sahel in Libya without shoes and begging for work will expose you to full force racism. The Rohingya from Burma feel the same racism, and we better start accepting the poor and oppressed are forever interlinked, one fuel for the other. You cannot complain about oppression and remain in the state of holistic poverty, fiscal and cultural. Two, having no history. Well, can you blame anyone for this one? Our culture in the diaspora comes from this moment. Our connection is to nothing beyond 10 minutes ago. We speak of Black history and Beyonce and Spike Lee are the primary discussion. If we are lucky, a little Malcolm X and King and Truth get thrown into the discussion. It never goes beyond slavery. But everyone respects Romans and Greeks because of their connection to greatness and antiquity. Iniquity. As for the Arabs, their entire notion of self wealth is connected to their ancestry. America might be at odds with Arabs, but they never denied them their place in history. This is why Egypt will be anything but Africa to maintain the distance between us and our real history. We complete the stereotype by being in reality and on TV villains and having broken homes. People who would rather spend on trinkets and not anything of value, such as their children's education. Walking around calling our sisters bitches and ourselves niggas. Is that respectable? We accept going by color because we hate being called African. We own nothing, only consume. Imagine what what would you think of someone who paid for and wore the hair of your dead? Too much attitude. Think someone owes us something. Our primary fuel is emotions, not thinking. Always angry, but never to for self. Will not support each other. Incapable of running our stuff. Rich countries, yet poor people. Every time there's a crisis, we need someone's help. We cannot build anything on our own, seen as every corrupt and trustworthy, very myopic, easily tricked. We would exchange land for a King James Version church over a business. And despite being fooled yesterday with that con, we will open our doors for being fooled by some more. Just refuse to love ourselves. And the world sees this. So, how can you respect anyone who does not respect themselves? If you enslave people and profit from that enslavement, it's very important to justify that crime by keeping Africans the fodder of history, as if these things done to us were fitting of our subhuman condition. The inferiority of Africans is fuel for the superiority of whites. Extremely backward and lacking intelligence. As unfair as this is the perception that seems on the surface to be backed up by reality. But the truth is, any group oppressed enough with a destroyed identity would appear backward and lacking intelligence. We have plenty of examples from white America. We are not agents. We seek no agency. We are content with inclusion in someone else's project, perceived as criminals associated with drugs, lawlessness, and rape and general violence. Unfortunately, along with South Africa, Africa is a pretty violent place, and our communities in the diaspora are pretty violent. As for crimes by race in America, well, the stats are also in. So it's Black Lives Matter stuff. And it says, but are any of these things part of the full discussion of Black Lives Matter? So this is the flaw of these concepts. No wonder so many whites are proud to hold up the flag and walk it down the streets. They would be eager to do so if the sign said economic and power or black by black or Pan Africanism or black empowerment. The entire Black Lives Matter is terminal. It is a concept so shallow, it offers the marginalized African no true access to power. And that's what all of this is about, okay? This whole entire discussion, all right, was to provoke thought as to we're sitting and we're talking about things that we don't have any clear understanding on. We don't know its origin. We don't know why people are saying these things. We don't understand. All we know is people are saying it. And because you're in a so called conscious sector, you've heard that word. Like I've heard people say things like read energy, and your ass couldn't read a damn book if your life depended on it. But you in the conscious sector and you pointing your damn finger at somebody else. There are some white people that are really good people, and I know a lot of them. Good people. But there are a lot of them that come in our communities to just start shit. Again, we have to take responsibility for our shit. We have to take responsibility for all of our shit. But after we do that, We need to fucking clean house. We need to clean house. If you're standing by and you're allowing anybody, anybody to assault your kind, to harm them, to hurt them. I mean, as you just heard, we have been programmed to hate one another. And there are people around here in these parts that feel like that is something that they can use as a conversation piece. There are people that run around here and scream out shit like, well, if y'all something something, then y'all a bunch of fucking sambos. And ain't nobody thought that that was out of hand. Everybody just sit and watch. I don't know. Sambo or Zambo is a derogatory term used for a person with indigenous American origin and in some countries also mixed with African origin. Okay? It's a racial term. Is a term used to refer to a black person, especially male. Sambo was invented by the hold on. Observed that early on Sambo, the coon caricature, anti-black imagery, the Jim Crow Museum. All right, let's get into it. The coon caricature is this cartoon I like that talks about that. Okay. Oh yeah, Mel, definitely check it out. The coon caricature is one of the most insulting of all anti-black caricatures. The name itself, an abbreviation of raccoon, is dehumanizing. As with Sambo, the coon is portrayed as lazy, easily frightened, idle, inarticulate buffoon. The coon differed from the Sambo in subtle but important ways. Sambo was depicted as a perpetual child, not capable of living as an independent adult. The coon acted childish, but he was an adult, a bait, a good for little adult. Sambo was portrayed as a loyal and content servant. Indeed, Sambo was offered as a defense for slavery and segregation. How bad could these institutions have been, asked the racialist, if blacks were content, even happy being servants? The coon, although he often worked as a servant, was not happy with his status. He was simply too lazy or too cynical to attempt to change his lowly position. Also, by the 1900s, Sambo was identified with an older, docile blacks who accepted Jim Crow and etiquette, whereas coons were identified with young urban blacks who disrespected whites. The coon was a Sambo gone bad. The prototypical movie Coon, the slow talking, slow walking, self demeaning nitwit, it took his character almost a minute to say, "Eyes be scratching my feet now, boss." A cinema historian lambasted the coon, as played by Stephen Fetchit and others. Before its death, the coon developed the most blatantly degrading of all black stereotypes. The pure coons emerged as no account niggas, those unreliable, crazy, lazy, subhuman creatures, good for nothing more than eating watermelon, stealing chickens, shooting crap, and butchering the English language. The coon caricature was born during American slavery. Slave masters and overseers described slaves as slow, lazy, once pushing, and eye servant and trifling. The master and slave operated with different motives. The master desired to obtain from the slave the greatest labor by any means. The slave desired to do the least labor while avoiding punishment. The slave registered his protest against slavery by running away. And when that was not possible, by slowing work, doing shoddy work, destroying tools, and faking illness. Slave masters attributed the slaves' poor work performance to shiftlessness, stupidity, desire for freedom, and genetic deficiencies. The amount of work done by a typical slave depended upon the demands of individual slave owners and their ability to extract labor. Typically, slaves worked from dawn to dusk. They were sometimes granted leisure time on Saturday or Sunday evenings. However, this time was spent planting or harvesting their own gardens, washing clothes, cooking, and cleaning. A slave owner wrote, I always give them a half of each Saturday and often the whole day, at which time the women do their household work. Therefore, they are never idle. Slave owners complained about the laziness of their workers, but the records show that the slaves were often worked hard and brutally so. Overseers were routinely paid commissions, which encouraged them to overwork the slaves. On a North Carolina plantation, an overseer claimed that he was a whole hog man, rain or shine, and boasted that the slaves had been worked like horses. He added, I'd rather be dead than be a nigger on one of these big plantations. After closing of the African slave trade, the price of slaves went up, thereby causing some slave owners and their hired overseers to be more careful in their use of slaves. Times had been, wrote one slave owner, that the farmer could kill up and wear out one Negro to buy another, but it's not so now. Negroes are too high in proportion to the price of cotton, and it behooved those who own them to make them last as long as possible. Slaves are generally associated with the harvest of cotton. However, slaves worked many industries. Almost every railroad in the antebellum South was built by slave labor. Slaves worked in sawmills, fisheries, gold mines, and salt mines. They were used as deckhands on riverboats, lumberjacks, construction workers, longshoremen, iron workers, and even store clerks. Slaves monopolized the domestic services. Some slaves worked as skilled artisans, for example, shoemakers, blacksmiths, carpenters, mechanics, and barbers. These artisans were generally treated better than the slaves in the cotton and tobacco fields. Therefore, it is not surprising that the artisans did better work. They included the slaves in the cotton. They included many ingenious mechanics, claimed the white colonial Georgian, as far as they have had opportunity of being instructed, have discovered as good abilities as are usually found among white people of our colony. The supporters of slavery claimed that the blacks were a childlike people unequipped for freedom. Pro slavers acknowledged that some slave masters were cruel, but they argued that the most were benevolent, kind hearted capitalists who civilized and improved their docile black wards. From radical Reconstruction to World War One, there was a national nostalgia for the good old darkies who loved their masters, and according to the pro slavers, rejected or only reluctantly accepted emancipation. In this context, the conceptualization of the coon was revised. During slavery, almost all blacks, especially men, were sometimes seen as coons, that is, lazy, shiftless, and virtually useless. However, after slavery, the coon caricature was increasingly applied to younger blacks, especially those who were urban, flamboyant, and contemptuous of whites. Thomas Nelson Page, a white writer, wrote in 1904. Universally, they, white Southerners, will tell you that while the old time Negroes were industrious, saving, and when not misled, well behaved, kindly, respectful, and self respecting, and while the remnant of them who still retain generally these characteristics, the new issue, for the most part, are lazy, thriftless, intemperate, insolent, dishonest, and without the most rudimentary elements of morality. Universally, they report a general depravity, a retrogression of the Negroes at large in sections in which they are left to themselves, closely resembling a reversion to barbarism. At the beginning of the 1900s, many whites supported the implementation of Jim Crow laws and etiquette. They believed that blacks were genetically, therefore permanently inferior to whites. Blacks were, they argued, hedonistic children, irresponsible, and left to their own plans destined for idleness. Or worse, it was not uncommon for whites to distinguish between niggers, coons and bucks, and Negroes, toms, sambos, and mammies, and they preferred the latter. So when we sit by and we allow people to use these racial slurs towards us, we really need to start looking at what time it is. We really do need to start looking. Like, I could go on and on and on, but I had to think about something. This is something that I know. Everybody else doesn't know what I know. You know, everybody doesn't know what I know. And this show low is a shame and a scandal, baby child. A whole scandal out here. A whole scandal out here. But we have been so complacent. So many of us have been so complacent. I myself was definitely guilty of the crime. Definitely. But that's the difference between me and most people. I stand in my shit 24/7. Because I learned a long time ago that I cannot change my condition until I change my mind. And I can't change my mind until I first accept what the hell is going on in my life. Okay? It's a reason I don't allow certain type of chatter to go on in my head, or certain things to subconsciously impregnate my mind. Some things I just won't be party to. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. Okay, I am Marvin's daughter. And honey, if you done dox me, know this. My father was something else. And when he said he was done, my daddy was done. Period. Okay? Period. And it wasn't no way around that. And I'm that man only child, only daughter, only kid, period. And I wear it proudly. I wear it proudly, because what I learned in my adult years is that my dad was a real sweet guy, but he ain't play with no damn pussies. If you brought him a move, if you tried some dumb shit, my daddy would chop your ass off at the knees and you was done. And it wasn't no coming back. My daddy did not do backsies. Period. If you fuck with him, you stuck with him. Period. I live by that. I live by that. So if at one point me and you kicked the bobo and I saw that you was in the company of certain people while they did certain things and you sat by complacently, I'm not going to dislike you. I'm not going to mistreat you. But it's always good, as somebody told me before, it's always good to know where you stand with people. And if that don't tell you where you stand with a person, nothing is. Okay? If somebody tell you that text that I just now read, the Willie Lynch letter, if somebody says to you, yeah, that worked on you, hell, it don't get it twisted. It had no choice but to fucking work. It's a part of our fucked up history. But who the hell are you? Who the hell are you to come and decide you're going to throw that up in somebody's damn face? And we need to stop being so stupid and complacent and understand what these people mean when they are saying this shit. Like, this is heavy stuff. I'm not going to lie. When the cops came to my house and told me that somebody that just threatened my life have called the cops on me and said that I'm harassing them, I cried like a baby. And when he asked me why was I crying, I said because this whole society is hopeless. It's hopeless. These people can harass me from last October, and he called you one time, admit to threatening my life, but it was just in the rage. And you come out here because you feel, you don't went for whatever, and I get it, it's cool. But when he got here, that was something that he understood in that moment, and it wasn't nothing he could do because it was just me coming to a realization, and everything that I had experienced and felt for those past months just came to a head. It came to a head. Like, I was tired of being tough in that moment, and I just blubbered and cried. It was awful. It was awful. Okay. But I just felt like overwhelmed with the idea that this person felt that they had the right to call the cops on me, and then felt that they had the right to hop back online and finish going at my ass. That shit bothered me real bad. Real bad. I'm about to see something if I can hop on here. Let me see. I might can do it. Hold up. All right. Hold up. Let's see. Okay. Oh, that's awful. Okay, let's stop this. Okay. Y'all let me know y'all can hear me. Is we still in this building? Is we in here? Is we in here? Is we in here? I see the little thing vibrating, so I think we in here. Now, yes, it was insane, Noel. And I cried like a baby. I mean, I cried. I blubbered because I could not take it. I could not take it no more. Like, you mean to tell me that all of this shit can be done, and after all of the stuff that this person did, they felt they had the right to call the police on me? They had the right. They felt they had the right. They ain't call the police like whatever. They called the police like I had actually been harassing. Not only when I did my live stream did I not refer to them at all, but my attorney was speaking about someone else. And this person just came out the woodwork, threatened me, told me, I swear to God, I'll come and I'll pop you in front of your kid. But he said that in a rage, so that was okay. And that's what the officer said. He said, I had to come out here and see what was going on because it sounded really odd that someone who had their life threatened didn't dial 911, but the person that did it did. He said that's what alerted him to something really bad was going on. And then he pulled up some things that another officer had in the file, and he put two and two together. And he was really nice, you know, all of that good stuff. But I couldn't deal with it no more. And because of that moment that I had, I felt like everybody needs to understand that we are at a pivotal moment right now. But we cannot allow people to come into the movement just touting, oh, black power and this and that and the third. And it's like a post a young lady put up the other day. Like, how can you be screaming Black Lives Matter, but you laying with the KKK? I think that we as people can do what we want to do. Like I said, I got a lot of ladies that I met on here. They are definitely white, but they are the sweetest things you ever wanted to meet. I could never look at them and see them as a racist or see them as a person that would, disrespect me or mistreat me or anything. But that does not make me unaware of the people that will. It doesn't. And I'm so tired of people on here thinking that there's three sides to this story. There's really not. There's not. There's not. And if it is, then the law is definitely on my side. And nothing that you do will provoke myself, my attorney, or anyone else. Anyone else. What you want to do is you might want to go out there and burn the damn tape of, recording an officer of the law when he asked not to be recorded. Now that I was contacted about, and I was contacted about other things too, but it's nothing else for me to say about the entire situation. So knock yourself out. I ain't got nothing to say. I got a court date. I got two of them. Okay. And like I said, this ain't nothing compared to that midnight train coming up out of Georgia. That's going to be the one that's going to knock people's socks off. I remember my attorney saying, I like to give people an experience. Honey, this about to be a whole live experience, child. A shame and a scandal. It is. It is. Out of all the people in the whole entire wide world, I remember a sister of mine, Sister Faiza. Her husband, Captain Muhammad, may God have mercy on his soul. Her husband and some other brothers had went to New York. Well, no, they had went to Hajj. They went to Saudi. They went and made the pilgrimage. So they needed to be picked up from New York. And it was a brother who, that was his job. He was supposed to go. He knew it was his job or whatever, whatever. And when those brothers came and got off that plane, they waited for hours and the brother never came. So my friend got up, got dressed, and of course drove to New York and went and got her husband. She got up, got ready, drove to New York. Now, mind you, I'm home in the bed. I don't know nothing about this. And about 6 o'clock in the morning, when I called her, I'm like, hey, what are you doing up? And she's like, I'm just now, winding down. I had to drive to New York last night. I'm like, what? Drive to New York for what? She's like, my husband came back and he wasn't even feeling good. He had gotten an ear infection or something. And the brother that was supposed to go and get them did not show up. Anybody that knows anything about Hajj understands that that is a very, very blessed situation. Very blessed, many blessings. And every year or in a lifetime, Allah chooses those who go to Hajj. Chooses, like you don't just get to go. So we're talking, and I'm like, well, dang, why didn't he come? She's like, I don't know. She says, but one thing I learned in life is this. Faiza told me, she said, in order for a person to go to hell, they have to commit certain actions. They have to do certain things to earn their spot in hell. She said, and if I was the one that you had to fuck over to get there, then so be it. When she said that to me, I kind of got it. I kind of didn't. But being put in the situation that I'm in right now, like, well, it's the end of it. Like, we at the climax. It's about over. Like, you know, I ran into, God put me in contact with some really good people. And it's crazy because this was the day that I had asked this one lady to ask that man to stop trying to pull up my personal information, you know? And like I said, unbeknownst to certain people, it's a Judas in the camp. And when the Judas let certain things out and said certain things, that alerted me in a whole different way. And I said to this one woman, I said, tell them to stop. I don't want them to get caught up in this because I'm not playing about that. And she said, they declined. He declined. He says he's going to do XYZ to you because you did this, that, and the third. And I'm like, wow, really? Like, I can't even, like, and in that moment, I was just so shocked. Like, oh my God, what won't they do? And I prayed about it. And in a couple of hours, I was put on a phone call with my attorney, Noel. I was put on the phone with her just out of nowhere. Her and somebody else called my phone. That is how merciful Allah was to me. And I mean, I didn't know what to do. And this woman called me with another person, and her and I just clicked automatically. And it went from there. But I think the most miraculous part of it all was that Allah sent me help. Like, I really do feel blessed. I really do feel favored because when I was in trouble, Allah sent me help. That right there was like very powerful for me because this had been eating at me and eating at me and eating at me, and I just refused to let it get the best of me. I said, I won't let these people see me feel no kind of way. They can talk about my children, they can say whatever they want to say. I know my kids are good. Hell, they know my kids are good, but they won't get the best of me. And I was stubborn. Like, I refused. I refused to let oh shoot. I refused to let them get get the best of me. And like I said, just me having that very stubborn attitude, you know, I get that from my dad. Like, I thank God for, you know, God putting that in me. Because if I was a lesser person, I would have lost my mind. Like, every day I would open up my every day I would open up my inbox, like I would have to hold my breath. I would have to hold my breath because every day it got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And it was like after Ramadan was over, I was at the end of my rope. Hold on, y'all. I'm in here moving around. Hold on. Me and my cat going to war, y'all. My bad. I guess I'ma hang with the fish. Kids got this little glow in the dark aquarium type situation, and the little fish glows in the dark too. And then it's another little group of fish. They live in the other little fish bowl, but they ain't nothing but food for Franklin. I feel bad for them, poor little minnows and comets. They just don't even know what awaits them. But yes, that whole thing was very stressful. It was so stressful. I was hyper vigilant, hyper vigilant, like trained to go. Okay. I was trained to go, but I had enough discipline not to say or do certain things. Certain things I wasn't going to say, certain things I wasn't going to do, irregardless of what was said or what was done to me. Some stuff I just ain't got it in me. I'm just not about to go down that road because where I come from, that kind of stuff is a problem. I understand that people are trying to work on counterclaims. So they running around here, bumping their gums and telling lies. And hey, if you like it, I love it. All I'm saying is do not, do not lie to yourself to the point where you believe your lie. Because you and I know that ain't 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 no way that the transgressors can become victims just because it's time for them to face the consequences of their actions. I don't understand how somebody can threaten someone's life and then lie and say that their life has been threatened. Like literally lying about it. And you're saying that somebody threatened to do something to you. Well, I mean, I have a whole recording, like 5 minutes long, of you detailing how you want to take me out. It's hilarious. A whole recording of you and how you want to do me in. But you have, like, that's what messed with me. That you had the balls to lie and say that it was me who threatened you. Like, that is what you call narcissistic supply. Look, you're going to hear somebody talk about this later on, honey, because they ain't got an original thought in their brain. But that's what it is. So when the narc does something, or when their conscience is almost ready to kick in, they will tell their self lies so that they can get angry with you, so that they don't have to feel bad about the things that they have done. The thing about reality is that when you go too far, you just go too damn far. And I'm afraid to say that threatening my life and pulling up my husband's social, that was kind of too far. That's why it's a problem. I don't know how many of y'all have ever had fresh white corn, but man, the corn that they plant up here on this hill here, man, there's some good stuff. I'm trying to tell you. I could eat this stuff all day, every day. And honey, I refuse to hit the live button and show my gorgeous face. Cause next thing you know, a weirdo gonna have me in there weirdo stuff on some creepo stuff. That's why I would rather we stick to the facts. Because people that have been lying and deflecting 30 and 40 years, they are experts. Experts. And are really good at manipulating the truth and spinning it. But it does not change the facts. It will never change the facts. It will never change the facts. It will never change what's going on. It will never change it. What's going on is going to be there. It's going to be there and it's going to be answered for too. So you can keep on, you know, doing whatever it is that you're doing. May I suggest that you stop calling the police when no crimes have been committed against you? You might can get yourself in trouble like that, especially recording cops while you know the FBI is certainly watching you. For sure. For sure. For sure. I mean, like after you decided to make up a whole lie about a cease and desist that was sent to you certified mail long before you claimed a woman that was a million miles away was running away from your house and you got her on like you called the cops and said that. Clearly you understand that you have to be responsible for your actions. No one has committed a crime by identifying what you have done. That is not criminal. That is not criminal. Like, you all really need to get an attorney because your attorney would tell you, first of all, with what's going on with you, your attorney would tell you to shut up. That's how everybody can pretty much determine who has secured representation and who has not. The people that are trying to prove their case online clearly don't have representation. Clearly. And it's really sad because if this was something that you were doing and you were cool with doing all this crazy stuff, you should have already had your lawyer prepaid, already ready to go. Because with the things that you all were doing and saying, I'm sure you knew that those things were really, really unlawful and illegal. No one has the right to exploit someone else's social or their record. No one has the right to do that to someone. I don't care how angry you are with them. You just don't have that right. And we really need to stick to the facts. We really need to stick with what is important. What's important right now is that all across the world, the people are waking up. And the ones that are in the way, they'll get rid of themselves. We don't have to get rid of them. We don't have to do anything. They are destroying themselves. But us,
we have our work cut out for us because we have to usher in the next generation, and we can't raise them to be complacent, and we can't raise them to just talk. We have to raise them to be self-sufficient, self-sustaining adults. How can we do that when we are so dependent on stimulation from other people, strangers at that? I am stimulated by the people that are in my home and in my life. I don't have to go out looking for my heart's content. I have it already. Anything that I don't like, I can change. Anything that doesn't need to be, it can go. I can get rid of it. But I don't have the right to impose my will on anyone. If someone wants to walk out on my life, like TD Jake said, I let them walk because everyone is not meant to go with you to the next level. Everybody can't go. And I get it. And I respect it. I respect it. Even if at some point I did not or did not want to. I wanted everybody to go. I didn't want people to be left behind because they were what I felt like a little misguided. And just because a person can refer to me with hatred and all of that good stuff, I don't hate them. Never have. Mm-mm. I despise what they do. I don't like what it's done. I don't like what their actions have caused. But hate, no, not at all. Not at all. And I don't I don't have to. I don't have to hate someone. And no one's gonna make me be hateful. And no one's gonna change me from the person that I am. I am who I am. I'm not hateful. I'm not vile. I'm not any of those things that someone would like to attach to me because they are deflecting their own behavior and what's inside of them. That's your problem. That's not my problem. I don't have those problems, and I don't have those problems with you. Never have. I simply invited you out of my life. And after certain deeds were committed, I let you know that that door was closed forever, that we could never be all right again. After you talk bad about my children, we will never. And you should go into the situation if that's what you're going to do to me. Go into that situation, go hard in the paint. But no, we're never coming back from it. Know that. And know that my not saying anything about your children has nothing to do with you or your child. It has everything to do with me and who I am and who I'm going to continue to be. All the things that I've been through in my life, hell, you don't know the drama. Hmm. You don't know the drama of sitting home waiting for your brother and you see a truck go up the street and then a police car turn into your house and for some reason, something is wrong. You don't know the trauma of knowing that the only people that you have in this world have gone on to the next. And you haven't learned everything that they have to teach you. So you being left out here to fend for yourself and to learn for yourself. And I'm just here to tell you that I ain't survived 30 years in Baltimore City being stupid, being gullible, or being a pushover. I'm just not going to talk about certain things. That's the G code. I ain't never seen one gangster say what he going to do to somebody, ever. That's how you can determine who's from the street and who not. In the street, we don't talk about it. Everything is on site. Everything. Everything. But sometimes people can become so intensely, insanely jealous that they'll fit there are 5 types of stalkers, and they'll turn into one called the predatory stalker, the one that wants to go after you of an insane, intense jealousy. Okay? They envy you. They envy your life. They envy what you stand for. And when you tell them that they are not allowed to take part in or to sit by and watch or hate on your future, which they know is going to be great because they know your greatness, they explode. I remember Nature Boy saying a long time ago that all of his trolls was going to destroy themselves. And I mean, that boy be off his rocker. But that part, he ain't never lied. We need to understand that there are other things that need our attention. And we have to go against the programming and cause the phenomena that Willie Lynch talked about. We have to bring about its occurrence. We need to make it happen. And allow our natural roles to sink in. And if we can do that, then we can change the world. Because we will understand what it is to help one another up. I love this corn, y'all. I'm having corn and coffee, y'all. It's not a joke. If you with me past 4 o'clock, then we done left nighttime and we done hit morning, y'all. Okay? But that's just a truth that we all need to be aware of. That the whole Willie Lynch thing is real. It's real. And we can't go around allowing other people to use our past, our hurt, our pain. Okay? Imagine someone mentally enslaving you, taking the slaves off your feet and putting them on your mind and not ever taking them off. He said it will spin perpetual, it will perpetuate and access all its own. meaning we will continue to birth and raise generations upon generations upon generations of slaves, of traumatized slaves. And I'm sorry if nobody else finds that offensive. I'm offended by that. Who are you? Who are you? Who gave you the right? Who gave you the right? I mean, I just think it's really sad. I think it's sad, y'all, and I think it's sad that we can't really sit and talk about it. We need to become okay with talking about these types of things. And we need to become okay with educating ourselves about certain things. So I'm going to close the night with something that we always did in group and treatment. If anybody ever been on drugs before, guys, before you leave, you always got to say the serenity prayer. Dear God, grant me the serenity to change the things that I can change. Wait a minute. Grant me the serenity to change the things that I can change, the courage to accept the things that I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's been real, everybody. Thank y'all for rocking with me. Next build we gonna definitely get down to it because we need to talk about this whole buck breaking situation. I think that we need to really touch on that. And ain't nobody say nothing about buck breaking. I'm saying something about it because we already discussed the entire Willie Lynch theory. And we need to step it up because we're the biggest, oldest social experiment out here. Okay? We are the greatest example of 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 character modification in history. You give us anything, we can make it look good. You give us trash, we can create treasure. The greatest human experiment ever. Thank you, Mel, for rocking with me. I appreciate you. I love you. I love you, Noel. I love you, Puerto Rico. I love you, Sir Cat. Anybody else that's in the bushes, I love y'all too. My haters, thank you. I appreciate y'all. Salute. You know what I'm saying? My enemies, it is what it is. May God give you the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, okay? And everybody else, man, y'all be easy. Y'all have a good night. Peace.